Most people who talk about Mars talk about rockets, about fuel, about how long the journey takes, what you eat, how you sleep. But these are not the only major problems. All of that is solvable. Difficult, expensive, complex, but solvable. SpaceX is working on it. NASA is working on it. The real problem only begins when you look beyond the journey itself and the short-term stay. It begins when the first humans are actually on Mars, when the station is built, when the systems are operational. When you start to think seriously about the fact that this isn't just a mission, but the beginning of a new civilization on another planet. There has never been a human pregnancy in space. Not a single one. We don't know if an embryo can even develop normally in low gravity. We have no data. And that is the foundation upon which the entire concept of a Mars colony rests. Adults can survive there at least in the short term. An adult body is complete. It is already fully formed. You can exercise, maintain muscle mass, monitor bone density, take medication. You can calculate the risks. Adults can decide whether they are willing to take those risks. But a colony cannot function with adults alone. A colony implies people who are born there, who grow up there, who view Mars not as an adventure but as home. Without that, it is not a civilization. Would a human born on Mars even be healthy? Would they develop normally? Would their body function the way a human body is supposed to function? Mars, without viable reproduction, is not a second planet for humanity. The human body is not simply a system that functions somehow or other. It is optimized for one specific environment, Earth. A planet with a specific gravitational field, specific radiation levels, and a specific rhythm. And an embryo knows this. Not consciously, of course, but at a cellular level, everything aligns itself with this single signal. Gravity. Where is up? Where is down? How must the bones grow? How should the cells divide? Mars possesses 38% of Earth's gravity. No one knows what happens when an embryo develops in this environment. Whether cell division proceeds normally, whether organs develop correctly, whether the skeleton takes the shape it is supposed to take. We have studies involving animals in microgravity. They exhibited developmental abnormalities, altered bone growth, and neurological irregularities. But mice are not humans. The second generation might no longer be the same species, not in a science fiction sense, but quite literally biologically. Different bone density, different muscle structure, a different physical tolerance limit. However, the environment and gravity of Mars are not the only problems. Radiation is one of the most severe challenges in spaceflight. Invisible particles that fly right through your body, and that is precisely why most people underestimate it. On Earth, we are protected. A magnetic field, an atmosphere, 2 layers that block out the vast majority of it. On the journey to Mars, these do not exist. And on Mars itself, they are barely present either. The magnetic field there is so weak that it practically does not exist. This means that cosmic radiation strikes the body unfiltered. For adults, this is a calculable risk, an increased risk of cancer and potential neurological damage over time. It is not pleasant, but it is measurable. Astronauts accept this risk. The problem lies with the germ cells. Egg and sperm cells react to radiation differently than normal somatic cells. They serve as the blueprint for the next life. And if that blueprint is damaged, the damage is passed on. Mutations that do not manifest in the parent, but only in the child. And an embryo in the process of formation constitutes an entirely different category. Cells dividing, specializing, transmitting information. All vulnerable simultaneously, a direct hit at the wrong moment in the wrong place. No one knows exactly what will result. Many of you surely already have ideas in mind, such as artificial gravity. Artificial gravity would be a good solution. Rotating structures that generate centrifugal force. The concept has existed for decades. Technically, it is well understood. However, actually building such a thing is another matter. Training can help, but it doesn't solve anything. Astronauts on the ISS train 2 hours every day, solely to slow down muscle and bone loss, not to reverse it, but to slow it down. After 6 months in space, many require weeks, sometimes months, to be able to walk normally again. And these are healthy adults. Radiation presents yet another problem. Shielding works, but shielding adds mass, and mass costs an exorbitant amount of money at launch. The level of protection required to make pregnancy on Mars even remotely safe would drive the already extreme launch costs into an entirely different dimension. This is not merely a technical limitation, it is an economic one as well. What this means is that even if we wanted to, we simply couldn't afford it right now. There are ideas, underground habitat structures shielded by the Martian soil itself, water reservoirs surrounding living quarters to absorb radiation. It is all conceivable. On paper, it all makes sense. But none of it has ever been built, tested, or proven. People talk about roadmaps, timelines, and initial manned missions. Yet they gloss over the question of what happens regarding children or reproduction, and whether it is even possible in the first place. There is no answer. Our technology would need to advance to the point where Mars becomes truly habitable. Artificial gravity, massive shielding, controlled environments, eventually perhaps even terraforming. This is not necessarily an unrealistic notion. It is simply one that operates on a timescale of centuries. And if technology cannot solve the problem, then only one other question remains. Perhaps it isn't the technology that needs to adapt. Perhaps it is us humans. Evolution sounds like something that happens slowly, millennia, hundreds of thousands of years, small changes that eventually add up. On Mars, it would be different. If 80% of embryos fail to survive the conditions there due to radiation, due to altered gravity, due to developmental issues we don't even fully understand yet, then only those who happen to possess the right genetic makeup from the start will be born. Not the healthiest in an Earth-eccentric sense, but the ones best suited for Mars. It would be admittedly somewhat brutal. The environment would simply force it. After 1 generation, you might not see any changes yet. After 3 generations, you might start to measure differences. Denser tissue that provides better shielding against radiation. Altered bone density better adapted to 38% gravity. A metabolism capable of subsisting on different resources under harsher conditions. The grandchildren of the first colonists would likely no longer be able to live on Earth. They would be made for a different planet. We send humans there with the goal of building a second home for humanity. But what might emerge in the process is not a second version of ourselves. It would be something new. The first generation truly born on Mars, not as an experiment, but as a native population, might no longer be quite what we currently understand humans to mean. The greatest obstacle between Earth and Mars is not the distance. It is us. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.